They told me my position no longer existed on a Thursday. And 11 weeks later, I was reading a job posting for the exact same role on the same company website for 60% of what I had earned in 19 years. My name is Raymond Cole. I'm 61 years old. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and for 19 straight years, I ran the regional distribution operation for a company that, by the time I left, was doing $2.4 million in annual revenue. I started there when we had 3 trucks and a leased dock with a roof that leaked when the rain came in sideways. I left there with 42 employees who knew their routes by heart and a warehouse that ran on a system I had built 1 spreadsheet and 1 freight bill at a time. The day they walked me out, the new ownership shook my hand and called it a position elimination. That was the language they used. Not laid off, not let go, eliminated. Like I was a line item that didn't add up anymore. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for a long time after that meeting. I had a banker's box on the passenger seat with 19 years of small things in it. A coffee mug, a picture of my granddaughter, 2 safety awards. And on top of that box, folded once down the middle, was a 2-page document I had printed about an hour before they called me into the conference room. My job description, my current job description, with my name at the top as the position holder. I didn't know yet why I had printed it. Something in my chest told me to. And that piece of paper, that one folded document, is the reason I'm sitting here telling you this story, instead of trying to explain to my wife why 19 years of work had quietly been worth nothing. Because 3 weeks after they walked me out, somebody else walked in to do my job. And 11 weeks after that, the company itself told the world what they had really done, in writing, on their own website, where anyone with a web browser could read it. They thought I was gone. They thought the older man with the gray beard and the bad knee had taken his banker's box and gone fishing. That was the first mistake they made in writing. If you have ever watched someone do wrong and think nobody was keeping count, stay with me. And if this story speaks to you, subscribe to my channel for more stories like this, because karma is often just truth arriving on time. Let me back up and tell you how I got there, because the why matters as much as the what. I joined that company in 2005. I was 42 years old. I had 2 kids in middle school and a mortgage that felt heavier than it should have. The man who hired me was named Doug Mercer. Doug was the founder. He was 67 at the time, a Korean War veteran's son, the kind of man who wore the same brown work boots for 10 years and resoled them twice. Doug took a chance on me when I had 3 years of experience and a lot of nerve. He told me on my first day, "Ray, I don't need you to be the smartest man in this building. I need you to be the one who's still here when everybody else has gone home." I never forgot that. For 19 years, I was that man. I was there for the ice storm in 2014 when half the trucks couldn't make it out, and I drove the runs myself in my own pickup. I was there for the recession when we cut everybody's hours, including mine, and I refused a bonus 3 years running because the warehouse guys hadn't gotten one. I was there when Doug's wife got sick and he was at the hospital, and I ran the place out of my back pocket for 4 months and never said a word about it. Doug knew. Doug always knew. Doug retired in 2022. He sold the company to his son Brian, who had been in marketing in Charlotte for 15 years and had never set foot on the dock during a busy week. Brian was decent. Not warm, not cold. He left me alone, and I left him alone, and the operation kept humming. I figured I'd give it another 4 or 5 years and then retire myself. My wife Lorraine and I had been talking about a small place near Lake Hartwell. We had a number in our heads. We were close to it. Then, in the summer of 2024, Brian sold the company. He didn't tell me until 2 weeks before the deal closed. He called me into his office on a Tuesday afternoon. He had a folder on his desk, and he wouldn't quite look at me. "Ray," he said, "this is going to be a good thing. They love what we built. They want you on board. They asked about you specifically." I asked him who they were. He told me a name I'd never heard before, a holding group out of Dallas. He told me the multiple they had paid. I didn't ask him for any of his money. I'd never expected any. I just wanted to know who I was working for now. That was the first red flag, looking back. Not what he said, what he didn't say. The new ownership came in on a Monday in September. 3 of them. The two younger ones I won't bother naming because they barely talked. The one who did the talking was a man named Garrett Wells. Garrett was 44. He wore a navy blazer over a t-shirt, and he carried a leather notebook with a fancy pen clipped to it. He shook my hand for too long, and he held eye contact for too long, and he told me, in our very first meeting, that they valued institutional knowledge. That was his exact phrase, valued institutional knowledge. He said it twice. He said they wanted to learn from me. He said the next meeting would be the following week, and we'd go through the operation together, top to bottom. That second meeting never happened. I want you to hear me clearly on that. It was not rescheduled. It was not postponed. It simply never happened. For 4 months, I asked his assistant 3 different times to put it on the calendar. 3 times she said she'd get back to me. 3 times nothing came of it. I kept running the operation. I kept hitting my numbers. I kept training the team. And Garrett Wells, the man who valued institutional knowledge, never sat down with me again. That was red flag number 1, a small thing, a polite thing, the kind of thing you tell yourself you're imagining. The second red flag came in late October. I noticed that someone was pulling reports out of our system that I hadn't generated. Payroll reports, headcount reports, job description reports. Now I had access to all of that, of course. I was the operations manager, but I always knew when I was running them, and I always knew who else was. Someone outside my team was running them on me, on my people, on the structure of the department. I asked our IT guy, a young man named Devin, what was happening. He looked uncomfortable. He told me corporate had requested a structural review. That was the phrase he used, structural review. I asked him who at corporate. He said he wasn't supposed to say. I didn't push him. He was 26 years old, and he had a baby on the way. I wasn't going to put him in a position to lie to me twice. Instead, that night I went home and I sat at my kitchen table and I did something I hadn't done in 19 years. I logged into our HR system from my home laptop and I went to the job descriptions folder and I pulled up mine. Regional Distribution Operations Manager. Position holder, Raymond Cole. Effective date, 2018, last revision. 2 pages, 11 specific duties. A list of supervised positions, a salary band. I read it through. I didn't print it. Not yet. I just read it. I closed the laptop. I went to bed. I want to tell you why I didn't print it that night. I think part of me still believed Garrett Wells was a good man having a busy quarter. I think part of me still wanted to be wrong. The lie worked until the paperwork caught up. But that night, the paperwork hadn't caught up yet. That night, I still trusted them. The third red flag came in early January. I had taken 2 days off for Lorraine's birthday. When I came back on a Wednesday morning, my parking spot was occupied. Not by a regular truck, by a small black SUV with a dealer plate. I parked 1 row over and I walked in through the dock and I said good morning to my shift lead, a man named Marcus Webb who'd been with me for 11 years. Marcus didn't smile at me the way he usually did. He said, "Ray, can I see you for a second?" We went into my office. He shut the door behind him. Marcus is a quiet man, a church deacon, father of 4. He doesn't traffic and gossip. He looked at me and he said, "Ray, did they tell you they're bringing somebody in?" I said no. He said, "There's a guy out there. Garrett brought him in yesterday, said he's going to be shadowing operations. He's young, maybe 34. He's got a binder with all our root data in it. Ray, I don't think he's shadowing. I think he's already got the keys." I sat in my chair. I took a breath. I thanked Marcus. I told him to go run the dock, and I would handle the office side. He started to say something else, and then he stopped himself. He looked at me with the kind of look one man gives another man when he's already grieving on his behalf. I went out and I met the new guy. His name was Tyler. He was, in fact, 34 years old. He shook my hand with both of his, and he told me how excited he was to learn from me. He had a very firm handshake. He had very white teeth. I asked him what his role was. He said Garrett hadn't given him a title yet. He said he was just there to support the transition. That was when I knew. Not in some dramatic way, just clearly, the way you know the temperature has dropped before you check the thermometer. I went back to my office. I shut the door. I picked up my desk phone and I dialed Garrett Wells's extension. He didn't answer. I left a message. Calm. Brief. Garrett, this is Ray. I'd like a few minutes when you have time today if possible. He never returned that call. That was a Wednesday. 3 days later, on a Thursday morning, his assistant called me at 7:45 and asked if I could come into the corporate conference room at 9. I want you to picture this room with me. It's a glass-walled room on the second floor of the office building attached to our distribution center. There's a long table. There's a credenza with a coffee setup nobody ever used. There's a window that looks out on the parking lot. When I walked in that morning, Garrett Wells was at the head of the table. Next to him was a woman I had never met. She had a folder in front of her and a name tag clipped to her blazer that said HR. Across from her was an attorney. I knew he was an attorney because of the way he was sitting. Lawyers sit a certain way. They keep their hands above the table. Garrett asked me to sit down. He thanked me for coming. He told me how much they appreciated my service. He told me that, after a thorough review of the organizational structure, they had made the difficult decision to eliminate the position of Regional Distribution Operations Manager. He told me my last day would be that day. He told me they were offering a separation package, contingent on my signing a release of claims. The HR woman slid a folder across the table. I asked one question, just one. I asked, are any of my duties being absorbed by another role? Garrett looked at the attorney. The attorney looked at Garrett. Then Garrett said, no, Ray. The duties are being distributed across the broader operations team. There won't be a single replacement. I let that sit there for a moment. I didn't say anything. The HR woman started walking me through the severance numbers. 12 weeks of pay, continuation of health insurance for 90 days. The release of claims they wanted me to sign included language waiving any age discrimination claim. I want to be specific about that because it matters. The release specifically mentioned the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, by name, in a paragraph that they wanted me to initial. I told her I would need time to review the documents. I told her I was not going to sign anything that day. She started to push back. The attorney touched her hand very lightly, and she stopped. I stood up. I shook Garrett's hand. I told him I appreciated 19 good years. I meant it, even then, about the 19 years. Not about him. Then I walked back to my office. Marcus was standing in the hallway. He didn't ask. He could see it on me. I told him I had about an hour to clean out my desk and I'd appreciate his help. He said, yes, sir. That's what he said. Yes, sir, from a man 11 years younger than me who had earned the right to call me Ray a long time before. Now here's the part I want you to remember. While I was packing up my desk, while Marcus was carrying my second box to my truck, I sat down at my computer one last time. I pulled up the HR system. I navigated to the job descriptions folder. I opened mine. Regional Distribution Operations Manager. Position holder, Raymond Cole. Effective date 2018, last revision. 2 pages, 11 specific duties. And I clicked print. I want to tell you what was running through my head when I clicked print. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't a strategy. It wasn't anger. It was a sentence Doug Mercer had said to me in 2009 when one of our drivers had been in a wreck and the other driver's lawyer had called us threatening to sue. Doug had said, Ray, in this life, the people who tell the truth keep paper. The people who lie throw it away. Always be the one with the paper. I took the 2 pages off the printer. I folded them once down the middle. I put them on top of the second box. I walked out of the building. Marcus walked me to my truck. I drove home. I did not cry. I did not yell. I did not slam anything. I sat in my truck in our driveway for about 20 minutes and I looked at the tree at the edge of our yard, the one that was just starting to bud out for spring even though it was still cold. Then I went inside and I told Lorraine. She held my hand for a long time and she said, Ray, we're going to be all right. That's what she said. We're going to be all right. She said it like a person stating a fact, not making a wish. I did not need to expose them. I only needed to stop protecting them. For the next 2 weeks, I did almost nothing. I slept. I cleaned out the garage. I drove down to see my brother in Macon. I let myself feel old for a little while. The release of claims sat on my kitchen table, unsigned. The folded job description sat on top of it, like a paperweight that had picked itself. 3 weeks after my last day, on a Tuesday night around 10 p.m., I was on the couch with my reading glasses on and my laptop open. Lorraine was already asleep. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was looking at retirement calculators, trying to figure out if we could move up our timeline. Out of habit, I clicked over to the company's job board. I had checked it almost every week for 19 years because part of my job had been knowing what we were hiring for. Old habits stay with you. There was a new posting at the top of the page, posted that day. It read, Distribution Operations Lead, Atlanta, Georgia. I stared at that title for a minute. Distribution Operations Lead, not manager, lead, a different word. Then I clicked on it. Karma did not arrive loudly. It arrived with proof. Because what came up on my screen when I clicked on that posting was the description of my old job. Not similar, not comparable, identical. Word for word, the same 11 duties, the same supervisory list, the same reporting structure, the same physical requirements, the same software systems, the same shift expectations. The only differences were the title at the top and the salary band at the bottom. The title had changed from manager to lead. The salary band had dropped to a number that worked out to almost exactly 60% of what I had been paid. I sat on that couch and I read it 3 times to be sure. Then I got up and I went to my filing cabinet in the spare bedroom and I pulled out the folded 2-page document I had printed on my last day. I brought it back to the couch. I laid it on the coffee table next to my laptop. I read them side by side, line by line, top to bottom. 11 of 11 duties matched. Word for word. I want you to understand what I felt at that moment because it was not what I had expected. I did not feel rage. I did not feel triumph. I felt something quieter than that. I felt the kind of stillness you feel when a problem you had been carrying for weeks suddenly becomes simple. They had told me my position was eliminated. They had handed me a release of claims that specifically waived age discrimination. They had brought in a 34-year-old to do my job for 60% of my pay. And then they had put it in writing on their own public website where any human being on earth could read it. I printed the new job posting that night. 2 pages, just like mine. I put both documents in a manila folder. I labeled the folder in pencil, Cole. I put the folder in the top drawer of my desk. I went to bed at 1 a.m. I slept better than I had in 3 weeks. The next morning at 8 o'clock, I called an attorney. I want to tell you how I picked her because there's a small lesson in it. I didn't go to a billboard lawyer. I didn't go to a TV ad. I went to a woman named Janelle Brooks, who had handled a small estate matter for Lorraine's mother 6 years earlier. I had liked her then. She had been straight with us. She had charged us less than her quoted estimate. I called her office. The receptionist asked if I had a matter. I said yes. She asked what kind. I said, age discrimination, I think. She put me on hold for about 30 seconds, and then Janelle picked up the phone herself. I told her the short version. The reposting on the company's own job board was the part she stopped me on. She asked me to read her the job titles again. Then she said, Mr. Cole, can you come in tomorrow morning at 9? Bring the 2 job descriptions, the separation agreement, and any emails about the position elimination. I said yes, ma'am. I sat in her office the next morning at 9. I laid the folder on her desk. The original 2-page description with my name at the top. The new posting with the new title and the lower salary. The separation agreement. A printout of every email I'd received in the 4 months since the acquisition. She read for about 25 minutes. She didn't talk while she read. She made small marks in the margins with a mechanical pencil. When she was done, she looked up at me and she said 2 things I'll never forget. The first one was, Mr. Cole, this is one of the cleanest age discrimination fact patterns I have ever seen in 22 years. The second one was, I want you to understand that we are not going to be loud about this. We are going to be correct about this. Loud is what loses these cases. Correct is what wins them. That was when I knew I was in good hands. The receipt was dated. The alibi was not. Janelle filed an EEOC charge within 10 days. EEOC stands for Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. It's the federal agency that investigates employment discrimination. Filing a charge with them is the legal first step before you can sue under federal anti-discrimination law. I want you to hear me clearly on this part, because some of you watching may be in a situation like mine, and you need to know there are deadlines. In most states, you have 180 days to file an EEOC charge, and in some states, 300 days. If you wait too long, the door closes, no matter how strong your evidence is. I had 97 days left when I called Janelle. I want you to think about that. 97 days. If I had waited 3 more months to take that habit-driven look at the job board, I might never have had a case at all. The EEOC charge that Janelle filed was 12 pages long. Attached to it was a side-by-side comparison of the 2 job descriptions in a 2-column format with the matching language highlighted in yellow, 11 of 11 duties highlighted, the reporting structure highlighted, the supervisory responsibilities highlighted, the software systems highlighted, the physical requirements highlighted. The only items not highlighted were the title and the salary band. The company received the charge about 3 weeks later. Their first response was through an outside law firm, a big one out of Buckhead. Their first response was that the charge was without merit, that the position had genuinely been eliminated, and that the new role of distribution operations lead had a fundamentally different scope. That's the phrase they used. Fundamentally different scope. Janelle read me their response over the phone. When she got to that phrase, she actually laughed. I had never heard her laugh before. She said, "Mr. Cole, 11 of 11 duties, word for word, is not fundamentally different scope. 11 of 11 duties, word for word, is the same job." The EEOC investigator assigned to our case was a woman named Patricia Ortiz. I never met her in person. We spoke on the phone 3 times. She had a calm, careful voice. She asked good questions. She didn't promise anything. She did exactly what she said she'd do. On the dates she said she'd do it. About 2 months into the investigation, Patricia did the thing that broke the case open. She issued a formal request to the company for all internal communications related to the decision to eliminate my position. Emails, memos, meeting notes, anything in writing between the new ownership group and HR and corporate legal regarding the elimination decision. The company had 30 days to respond. What came back was the second open loop in this story, and I want to give it to you carefully. In the documents the company turned over, there was an email chain from October, while I was still working there, 3 months before they walked me out. The email chain was between Garrett Wells and the HR director, and it was about a different employee, a woman named Sandra Pierce, who had been a regional accounting manager at one of the new owner's previous acquisitions. Sandra was 58 years old. The email chain discussed how to right-size her department, how to transition out higher-cost legacy headcount, and how to reposition the role at a market-appropriate compensation level. That was the language. Right-size. Transition out higher-cost legacy headcount. Reposition at a market-appropriate compensation level. The email chain ended with Garrett Wells writing this exact sentence. "We did this cleanly with Pierce. We can do it cleanly with the Atlanta operations seat too. Same playbook." Same playbook. He had done this before, to another woman in another state who had been almost exactly my age, and he had put it in writing to his own HR director on the company's own email server, because it had never occurred to him that anybody outside that conversation would ever read it. Janelle called me the day she got the production. She read me the email chain over the phone. When she got to same playbook, she paused. Then she said, "Mr. Cole, I want you to take a long walk this afternoon. I want you to come back tonight, and I want you to think about what we should ask for, because we are no longer in a settlement of nuisance posture. We are in a settlement on our terms posture, and I want you ready when they come back to the table." I took that walk. I went out on the Silver Comet Trail, the one near our house, with Lorraine. We walked about 3 miles. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about Doug Mercer. We talked about Sandra Pierce, the woman I had never met. We talked about Lake Hartwell. We talked about what I owed to the people who had worked under me for 19 years and who were still inside that building watching to see how this turned out. By the time we got back to the trailhead, I knew what I wanted. I did not need to expose them. I only needed to stop protecting them. And I did not want only money. I wanted 3 things. I wanted full back pay from the day they walked me out with interest. I wanted damages that reflected what they had actually done, not just to me, but as part of a pattern. And I wanted the EEOC investigation to be on record, so that whatever they did next, they would do it under federal scrutiny. I told Janelle the next morning. She wrote it down. She said, "We can ask for all 3. I think we'll get all 3. Now I want to tell you about the silence moment in this story, because every story has one, and this one mattered. The settlement negotiations took about 6 weeks. There was a lot of back and forth. I'm not going to walk you through every offer and counteroffer because most of it was lawyers being lawyers. What I want to tell you about is the night before our scheduled mediation. It was a Thursday night in late April. Janelle had sent me their latest offer that afternoon. The number was significantly higher than their first offer, but it was still about 30% below what we were asking for. Janelle thought we could close the gap at mediation the next day. She was confident. I trusted her judgment. But I was the one who had to walk into that room. That night, I sat at my kitchen table by myself. Lorraine had gone to bed. I had a cup of coffee getting cold next to me. I had the manila folder open in front of me. I had the original 2-page job description on my left. I had the printout of the reposted job listing on my right. I had Patricia Ortiz's letter from the EEOC in the middle, and I had Garrett Wells's email, the same playbook email, sitting on top of all of it. I sat there for almost an hour. I didn't read anything. I didn't take notes. I just looked at the papers. And I thought about how many other people were going to sit at kitchen tables like mine in the next 10 years if Garrett Wells and the people who hired him kept running their playbook. People older than me, people with mortgages and grandkids and tired knees, people who had spent 20 or 30 years building something for a company that was going to decide one Thursday morning that they didn't exist anymore. I made a decision at that kitchen table. I decided I was not going to settle out of anger. I was not going to settle out of fear. I was going to settle from the truth. The truth was that I had 19 years of clean records, 2 job descriptions that matched word for word, and an email from their own executive that admitted the pattern. The truth was strong enough to carry the consequence by itself. I did not need to embellish it. I did not need to threaten anything. I just needed to let the record speak. I went to bed at midnight. I slept fine. The mediation the next morning lasted 6 hours. I'll spare you the details of the room and the coffee and the conference room with the painting of the marsh on the wall. I'll give you the result. The settlement included full back pay from my termination date. It included damages above and beyond the back pay, in an amount that took into account the documented pattern with Sandra Pierce. It included continuation of my health insurance through the date I would have qualified for Medicare, and it included a non-disparagement clause that worked both ways, which was important to me, because I was not going to spend my retirement bad-mouthing a company I had given 19 good years to. The bad ones were Garrett Wells and the people above him. The company itself, the company Doug Mercer had built, was not the villain in this story. But here's the part the company didn't see coming. The EEOC charge, as a matter of public record, had already triggered something I could not have stopped even if I had wanted to. Once a federal investigator has documentation of a pattern of practice, that documentation can lead to a broader compliance audit. And that's what happened. About 4 months after my settlement closed, the new ownership group received a formal notice that their employment practices across all of their portfolio companies were going to be subject to a federal compliance review. The audit took 18 months. It cost them, by every estimate I have heard secondhand, considerably more than what they had paid me to settle. It cost them more than what they had paid Sandra Pierce to settle because Sandra had a case too once Janelle quietly forwarded the email chain to her attorney through the proper channels. It cost them in legal fees, in consultant fees, in changes they had to make to their HR practices across every state they did business in. And it cost Garrett Wells his job. Quietly. Without a press release. About 14 months after my last day, his name came off the leadership page of the parent company's website. Nobody announced it. It was just gone one day, the way my position had been just gone one day. The job description I had printed on my last day, that 2-page document with my name still listed at the top as the position holder, sat on Janelle's desk through every one of those proceedings. She kept it in a clear plastic sleeve. The corner had a small fold from where I had folded it once down the middle, in the parking lot of the distribution center, on a Thursday afternoon in January, before I knew yet what I was going to do with it. That single piece of paper was the difference between a quiet retirement and a federal case. 2 pages, 11 duties, 1 name at the top. That was all it took. I want to tell you the lesson I took out of this, because I think about it most mornings now, when I'm out on the back porch with my coffee and Lorraine's still asleep. Garrett Wells didn't get caught because somebody whistle blew on him. He didn't get caught because some heroic insider leaked his emails. He got caught because he assumed I was old and tired and gone. He assumed I would take the severance check and the release of claims and disappear into a rocking chair and a fishing pole. He assumed that the older man with the gray beard didn't know how to use a job board. He assumed I wouldn't print things. He assumed I wouldn't keep paper. He was wrong about every single one of those assumptions. And he was wrong because he had never met Doug Mercer, and he had never been told on his first day 40 years earlier that the people who tell the truth keep paper. If you are watching this and you are over 50 and you are sitting in a job you have given 15 or 20 or 25 years to and something has started to feel different in the last few months, I want to ask you something. Are you keeping paper? Not in a paranoid way, in a Doug Mercer way. Your job description, your performance reviews, your emails about your responsibilities, your written commendations. Print them. Save them somewhere outside the company server. Not because you expect to need them, because if you ever do need them, by then it's already too late to start. That's the lesson. Not vengeance, not bitterness, just the quiet, ordinary, grown-up habit of keeping paper. I retired this past spring. Lorraine and I bought the small place near Lake Hartwell. It's not fancy. It's got a screened porch and a dock that needs a new board on the second step. I work on the dock most weekends. I read in the afternoons. I take my granddaughter fishing on Sunday mornings. I don't think about Garrett Wells very often anymore. When I do, I don't think about him with anger. I think about him the way you think about a man who locked his keys in his car. A small act of carelessness, with a longer consequence than he ever expected. Marcus Webb still texts me on the 1st of every month, just 2 words. Doing good. That's it. Doing good. He runs the dock now. The 34-year-old Tyler didn't last. He left the company about 9 months after I did, on his own, for reasons I never asked about. The job he was hired into was eventually filled by Marcus at a fair salary with a real title. Distribution Operations Manager, the same title I had carried for 19 years. Marcus earned every letter of it. Doug Mercer passed away last fall. He was 86. I drove down to the funeral in the same suit I had worn to my termination meeting. After the service, I stood by his casket for a long time. I didn't say much. I just thanked him, in my head, for one sentence he had said to me in 2009 about a wrecked truck and a lying lawyer. In this life, the people who tell the truth keep paper. The people who lie, throw it away. Always be the one with the paper. I was the one with the paper. That's the whole story. And if stories like this remind you that truth has a longer memory than lies, subscribe to my channel for more stories. Because sometimes karma is just the evidence finally being read aloud. Take care of yourselves. Keep your records. And if somebody ever tells you your position no longer exists, don't argue with them in the room. Just go home, sit at your kitchen table with someone who loves you, and ask yourself one question. Did I keep paper? Because if you did, the rest of the story is already written. It just hasn't been read yet. I'm Raymond Cole. Thank you for listening.